There are those who say that television has no redeeming values. There are those that say that progressive radio is obnoxious. In an effort to prove both of those statements to be true, WQAX will present Monday nights at 6:30 on Channel 7 its unique version of radio-free television. Why not tune in to the chance of a lifetime and redeem no values on the obnoxious radio-free television?
Why is it that these men are not smiling? Well, part of the reason is that their job is administrating the main Bloomington campus of Indiana University. You see, there are about 30,000 students who are being instructed here in their constitutional rights, and some of them actually have the audacity to exercise these rights right there in the Chancellor's office. The Chancellor himself is to your left. He shall remain nameless because everybody knows who he is. He announced recently that he was quitting. To your center is Thomas Schreck, the Dean of Students, who is usually a reasonable man. He encourages students to make the system work and make his job easier. I guess he didn't like how we worked it, since he wouldn't give us our own telephone for about 6 months. Dr. Herbert E. Smith, Assistant Dean of Students, and once very well known as the campus disciplinarian. In the years when I first arrived at IU, if you were a sophomore and you were caught driving a car, Dr. Smith could say, "You're expelled," and that was that. Dr. Smith was also a fairly good radio announcer in the early 50s, and personally is a nice guy. I once met him in a bar and he seemed to be having a good time. Fortunately, he didn't notice that I was underage. WQAX became a student-owned, not-for-profit corporation at the end of August in 1973 at a cost of $26. We took the name of the Indiana University Student Broadcast Corporation, which, although perfectly legal, caused a lot of hassle from Dean Schreck and the legal staff of the university. We wrote a prospectus and after much negotiating got a capital loan from a local bank for $3,300. Personal co-signers were required for half the loan, and the equipment we bought covered the other half. Steve Danzig, president of the student body and the newly formed Indiana University Student Association, quietly secured an IUSA office for WQAX as a part of his program to replace the old student government with a wide range of student services. He also became one of the 3 legally required corporation directors. Tom Hirons, the vice president, became the 2nd director and a co-signer for 1/6 of the loan. Eva Berkey co-signed for 1/3 of the loan, and Jim Berkey, which is me, became the 3rd director and general manager, as well as assuming a bunch of other silly titles that Indiana state law forces on you. The bank also required that we have a 1-year contract with the cable company. This was difficult to get because the Monroe All-Channel Cablevision was owned by the Telesis Corporation, a cable conglomerate big enough to have its own Washington, D.C. attorney. I had to call him several times. He had never heard of cable FM and had to call some buddies at the FCC to find out if it was legal. As it turned out, there were FCC people who had never heard of it either. This is WIUS. According to audience figures from the 1972 JCR Annual, IUS was the 6th largest carrier current station in the IBS membership. It is run by students, but technically owned by the university according to some sources. Legally, it is an association and therefore has virtually no legal protections of ownership of any kind. I worked and learned here for a number of years as chief engineer mainly, but I also did some sales, production, news, announcing, you know, the stuff everybody does some of. I hold the all-time record for total length of service in campus radio at IU, and I'm runner-up for being fired the most times. The cable idea got started here when 5 of us WIUS people wrote a prospectus on CAFM and got permission from just about everybody in Bloomington, including the University Business Office, to put IUS on the system. We then presented this fistful of yeses to the WIUS Board of Directors. The key point was that for an investment of about $600, we could add an estimated 5,000 students to IUS's audience. Money was not a problem. IUS bills $15,000 to $20,000 a year. The board of directors at that time consisted of 7 faculty and administration and staff people and 1 manager student whom the rest had selected. The board appointed its own new board members, and the chairman was Dr. Smith. They tabled the cable indefinitely. And when I asked Dr. Smith about it, he said students shouldn't be talking to townspeople. He also criticized all 5 of us for talking to the University Business Office without his permission. September 11th, our $255 modulator arrived from Anaconda. We hadn't said a word to anyone about anything except a few people that we thought we could trust. That same evening, an article appeared in the local paper saying WIUS was going on cable. A man from the Telesis Corporation had misinterpreted one of my letters. We could hear things hitting the fan. September 12th, the modulator was installed and we set up the station with borrowed portable equipment. The chosen room was the office of the Student Athletic Board, and when we entered, they were having a meeting. Danzig politely threw them out, and we shoved their furniture into the hall. September 13th, the broadcast loops were installed, and there were rumors that Dr. Smith had found out about quacks. September 14th, we put a test signal on the air, and Dr. Smith called the cable company and tried to have our plug pulled. The same evening, we gave the whole story to the somewhat shocked general manager of WIUS, and finally that evening, yes, we finally got around to finding an announcer. That was Friday. The following Tuesday at 4 p.m., I got a call from Dr. Smith asking if it was true about the station, and if so, when we were going on the air. I said yes, and 8 o'clock tonight. There were some noises at the other end of the line that I would describe as splutters. We were on the air from 8 to 10, and we only had 1 turntable. We actually had an audience, too. I met him several months later. That was September 18th, 1973, the day it all got started. We got a second turntable the next day, and this picture may give you a faint idea of what it was all like. Really, it was just 2 desks shoved together in an L shape with 2 home-type turntables, and an old Gates mono remote mixer, plus an old Altec capacitor mic, and a Wallensack tape recorder which doubled as monitor speaker. We borrowed an IUSA telephone from the next room. Notice those empty record shelves back there. September 19th, the morning after. The Indiana Daily Stupid, a winner of many awards, got a hold of the quack story and didn't let go of it for a semester. They interviewed everybody that would answer the phone. Quote, IUSA faculty advisor. I'm completely unaware of what IUSA is doing with the radio station. I don't know how they did it. Quote, Dean Schreck. I haven't found out where the issue stands now. Dimensions of any contract would have to be reviewed by the university. Quote, Dr. Smith. This is complete news at this time. There are no provisions for any radio signal to be coming from IU without the knowledge of the president and the trustees. It would not be possible for any student group to do this without going through the president. If Monroe Cable wanted to have a radio signal, they could do it themselves. I don't know why they wouldn't. They also spelled my name wrong in this article.